Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Behind the Servants. Today, I'm going to be covering everyone's favorite Bara Bear, the man, the myth, the womanizer, Orion. Now, here in the void where I reside, we occasionally see the constellation that makes up the archer who punches people. Ever since I was a child, I could always point him out in the night sky, and even to this day when I'm out on nighttime walks, I look up to see if I can spot him. But for some reason, despite knowing his name for the majority of my life, his is a legend that kind of flew under the radar for me. So today, let's learn together about the man that was Orion. So the tale of Orion, much like any good story, is fragmented, with some authors redacting or adding details as they go. We see this occur with mythology all of the time, and as such we have to go off of what we have. Remember, the first mentions of any mythological figures in writing is rarely when they first actually appear. The oral tradition of storytelling existed long before the written word, so it is far more likely that the story of Orion has existed with us for a much longer time. To back this up, we know that Orion existed in the oldest literature of the ancient Greeks. Hesiod is said to be the oldest retelling of the story in a collection that was lost to time, possibly the Astronomia. This collection tells the story of the known constellations, and of course Orion is among them. In Hesiod's version, Orion is said to be the son of the sea god Poseidon and Uriel. Not our Uriel, but another who was the daughter of King Minos, really throwing a strange twist into our Uriel's infatuation with Asterios, also a child of Minos. Because of his father's authority over the seas, Orion gained the ability to walk across the water, and thus he traveled to the island of Chios. While here, he went off on a bender and ended up raping the daughter of the ruler of the island. Her name was Merope, and her father, Oenopion, retaliated by blinding Orion and then driving him away. In his blind wanderings, Orion wound up in Lemnos, where he found the forge of the god of smithing, Hephaestus. Hephaestus instructed a servant of his named Seldion to guide the blind man to the east where he could find Helios, the god of the sun. When he did, Helios restored sight to the hunter. In thanks, Orion carried Sedalion around on his shoulders, grateful to the man for his service. Orion then decided to get vengeance on Oenopion for blinding him and returned to Chios. The king managed to avoid Orion, who eventually simmered down and left. Yes, Orion had the audacity to try and get revenge on the man who blinded him because he raped that man's daughter. His next journey had him cross the waves again to the Isle of Crete. Here he met up with who else but the goddess of the moon and hunt, Artemis, who was also out with her mother, Leto. The group formed a hunting party and began tracking and killing the creatures of Crete. It is implied that over this time, Artemis began to take some interest in the man's hunting abilities, and in an act of showboating, Orion declared that he would hunt every creature on the earth. Now, it is implied that Orion did in fact have the skill to perform such an act, which likely piqued the interest of the hunt goddess. But this declaration fell upon the ears of another. In one rendition, it was Gaia, who genuinely feared for the well-being of the earth, and in another, it was Apollo, who was none too happy that his sister was getting on so well with a buff bear. Regardless, the outcome remains the same. The offended party sent a scorpion to Orion, and it stung him with a potent venom. Orion killed the creature, but succumbed to the venom as well. On his death, Artemis and Leto asked Zeus to put Orion's body into the stars. He agreed, and thus the constellation Orion was made. However, he also added the scorpion there as well, forming the constellation Scorpius. The other major record of Orion is not so much about his origins, but is more useful in seeing why he is designed how he is in Fate. Homer's tales of the Iliad and the Odyssey both make references to the Great Hunter. In the Iliad, Orion is only mentioned as a constellation, with the star Sirius being his loyal dog. He is described much clearer in the Odyssey, where he is seen hunting in the underworld with a great bronze club. They say that he was the most handsome man on the planet and that his lover was Eos, the goddess of dawn. But he was killed by Artemis. It is even said that he may as well be the patron of all great hunters. This is a very important thing to note with Orion, as he, spoilers, is the former Grand Archer. This essentially means that he was the best archer during the time that he lived, and beat out every other candidate for a time. But herein lies the issue. Orion is not really talked about outside of what has already been said. He's not like a Heracles or a Jason, where people continually add to his story. He is fairly clear-cut in what he did. But there are some minor additions to his feats that help solidify him as the hunter that he is so well known as. Most of these additions can be described as fanfiction, stuff that appears along the margins of other stories written in by readers. Alternatively, there may be regional variants for these as well. Let's start with his birth story. A different variant comes from the margins of a copy of the Iliad, so it really shouldn't be taken that seriously, but honestly, it's just a great story. The gods Zeus, Hermes, and Poseidon all go to visit Helios of Tanagra. To celebrate this visit, Helios roasts an entire bowl for them. The gods ask him if there's anything that he would want in return, and he responds that he would like a son. So, the three gods take the bowl skin and collectively piss into it. They then tie the piss balloon shut and bury it in the ground and say, "Don't open it for 10 months. The baffled man is like, alright, and they continue their feast. Then, in 10 months, he digs up the piss skin and inside is a baby, who Helios names Orion, which means to urinate. There is also the separate collection of tales about the constellations that tell a completely different story of Orion. However, this one appears to have shown up later on and written by someone named Hyginus. He utilizes the piss story as the origin of his birth, but cuts out Poseidon for some reason, and claims that he was born in Thebes or Chios. He offers 2 possible ways Orion could have died. The first is that Orion wanted to show off to Artemis in Leto, and thus proclaimed that he could kill anything that walked on the earth. Gaia was more or less like Bet and made the scorpion which killed him. In the second version, Apollo became jealous of Orion's love for Artemis and arranged for Artemis to put him down. One day, while Orion was out for a swim, Apollo made a wager with Artemis. He bet that Artemis could not hit that strange black thing in the water. Naturally, Artemis took his challenge to heart and unleashed an arrow that shot right through Orion. When his corpse washed ashore, she realized what had happened and she cried and eventually decided to place him among the stars. In this collection, Hyginus connects to the Orion constellation to several other ones. Canis Major and Minor are his loyal dogs, which are chasing the celestial hare Lepus or Terrace, depending on who you ask. Aside from this, and one other detail, most variations are minor ones. Things like Merope being the king's wife rather than daughter, or Artemis killing Orion with an arrow rather than a scorpion, or who killed the scorpion, or who called the scorpion to kill Orion. There is one detail that actually pertains to our good doctor, Asclepius. He is credited in later versions for resurrecting Orion, or in some cases, being the one who fixed his blindness. Again though, this appeared much later down the line, so it can likely be chopped up to a fan's edition. Fate uses the Asclepius angle, but rather than having successfully resurrected him, Zeus fires a thunderbolt at the Doctor before he can reach him, killing him in the process. The only question that I am really left with after writing this has to do with Orion's famed belt. His belt is formed from the 3 stars, Alnilam, Mintaka, and Alnitak. I couldn't really find anything referencing him having a spectacular belt, but I did find out that Mintaka is actually a dual star composed of 2 stars orbiting each other, so that's pretty neat. But that is it! Thank you all so much for watching, I really do appreciate it. Let me know what you thought down in the comments, like the videos, it really does help out the channel, subscribe to catch these as they go up, check out my Twitch for significantly less structured content. Hey, we have a Discord now, so check that out as well. There's also a Twitter for life updates, but for now, keep your chin up, peace.